Well, Syrian Christians are also celebrating this Wednesday, even as they, along with other religious minorities in the country, face an uncertain future. The new leadership in Damascus, headed by the Islamist rebel group HayatTahriral-Sham, has vowed to ensure religious freedom in the Sunni majority country. However, some Christians are not convinced, fearing the new leadership's ideology will mean their community's aspirations will not be taken into account in the transition. To talk more about the future for Christians in Syria, but also in the Middle East, we're joined by Dr. Hellyer, who's a senior associate fellow at the Royal United Services Institute for Defence and Security. Thank you very much for joining us on France 24. We're going to start with Syria then, because on Tuesday, Christians held protests over the burning of a Christmas tree in Hama. Do you think that's an isolated incident, or is it likely we'll see more of these kinds of things?
So thank you for having me on your program. It's clearly an isolated incident. We haven't seen any others throughout the season thus far. So there's been one tree burning. We also saw a reaction from the new authorities that was pretty swift in terms of saying such things have to be condemned, that there'll be punishment of the perpetrators. So I think it's important not to try to extrapolate from a single incident what the future may hold. Of course, the future is a very uncertain one because this is a transitional period after the fall of one of the most brutal regimes in the Arab world in my lifetime. And the way forward seems to be open to many different types of possibilities and potentials. A lot of good signals thus far from the new authorities. We all wait to see how these are translated into actual policies on the ground. But so far, good signals.
Okay, so we'll have to wait and see. But do you believe that the new leadership will be able to protect Christians and other minorities?
So it's not so much what I believe, it's purely what we can judge on the basis of what's been said. But again, good speeches, good signals, but we wait to see about policies. Again, this is a very new time. It's a transitional process. They've been ruling Syria now for the past 2 weeks, not for the past 2 years or 2 months. The indications are that they want to build a pathway forward that includes all of Syria's communities. And of course, Syria's Christians are Syrian as everybody else. They've made that clear. The new authorities have talked about, the plurality of Syria. So the signals are fine. The signals, I think, are very good, actually. But how this actually plays out in the policy is what I think everybody is waiting for.
Well, Lebanon has the biggest Christian population of any country in the Middle East, but that's been dwindling in recent years. Why is that?
So proportionally speaking, it has the largest Christian population. It doesn't have the absolute largest. Of course, you have far more in other places. Why it's dwindling? Well, because Lebanon is going through an incredibly difficult economic period where anybody who's able to leave is more inclined to do so. And Christian communities have been going to places like France and elsewhere if they're able to, and they're doing so in significant numbers. I'm not beyond that. You can talk about the difference in terms of birth rates from other communities as well, but typically speaking, you have, according to some reports at least, higher proportions of foreign passports among some communities in Lebanon than others, so they're able to leave more easily. But I'm not sure what you're getting at here.
Okay, well, what about the Christian population in Gaza? I mean, we've seen a similar phenomenon when many had already left before the October 7 war. It's obviously hard to imagine those people ever moving back, given the destruction. What kind of effects do you think this has when certain religious communities leave these countries? What kind of shifts does that give way to?
So I want to zoom out for a little bit here. The main problem in Gaza is, of course, Israel's war on Gaza and a long-running occupation that's been going on for decades. And Christian communities in Gaza, as well as throughout the Palestinian occupied territories in East Jerusalem, which is occupied, the West Bank, of course, have been complaining about the effects of the occupation and the war on Gaza as it pertains to their communities. And you've seen the Catholic Church itself come out incredibly publicly vis-a-vis the Pope over the last few days and the last year in terms of the impact of Israel's war on Gaza, as well as throughout, I have to say, the rest of the occupied territories. So that's what we're looking at here. The largest issue in terms of the problems and the makeup of society, they all stem from the fact that there's an occupation. It's been going on since 1967, uninterrupted, and the incredible increase of violence, particularly in Gaza, but also in the West Bank, where Palestinians are being pushed from their villages and their lands being expropriated. That's the huge elephant in the room, as it were. Of course, when it comes to the plurality of society, all of that is going to take a hit because the more people can leave under such pressure, then I think the more they will. I don't agree, by the way, that they'll never come back. I think many of them would want to come back, would try to come back, but when it comes to Gaza, a huge amount would need to take place in order to make it habitable. And it is incredibly difficult for people to just live in Gaza right now, where you see horrific images of, animals eating human remains because of the level of depravity that has been visited upon the occupied territory by the Israeli forces.
Okay, well, we can zoom out a bit if you want. I mean, what hope do you think then there is for peace in this region?
Uh, the issue is frankly about countries' policies. First of all, when you say peace in the region, we might as well talk about peace in Europe because the fact that there's a war in Ukraine doesn't mean that there's war throughout the European region, and the Arab world more generally, thankfully, does not uh, suffer from the same sort of war that is being visited on Gaza. But in terms of, if I think I understand your question to be, will there be peace in the Palestinian occupied territories vis-a-vis the Israeli occupation? And it's as simple as that. If the Israeli occupation were to end, then I think that you would see a huge amount of normalization take place between the Israelis and their neighbors. This has been stated multiple times by the Arab states, not just over the last year, but over the last 2 decades at the very least. But hitherto, you haven't seen moves in that direction come from Tel Aviv. Rather, you've seen more expropriation of Palestinian territories. You've seen, this new conflict that erupted when it came to taking territory in Syria, of course, Lebanon of the past year. So, is there hope? There's always hope for peaceful resolutions to all of these conflicts, but there have to be sincere moves in order to move in that direction. And I think when you look at how the international community has responded, at least rhetorically, over the past year. You look at the UN resolutions, you look at the United Nations Security Council, but also the General Assembly resolutions. It's very clear where I think world public opinion has gone. They see correctly Israel as occupying territory that is an illegal occupation of. That's been stated by the ICJ as well. And it's difficult to come to peaceful settlements with countries when they insist on breaking international law. So that I think that that's where we have to move here. It's not simply about negotiating for peace. It's about holding everybody, whether it be the Palestinians or the Israelis or the Syrians or whoever it is, to a single standard, that of international law. And if we focus on that, I think that durable and a just peace can certainly take place, and that would be the interest of all of our security.
All right, Dr. H.A. Hellyer from the Royal United Services Institute for Defence and Security. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.